Evening, everyone. Welcome to the joint meeting of the Ayer Select Board and the Ayer Finance Committee. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, 2026. This hearing of the Ayer Select Board and Ayer Finance Committee will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with a particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom and Channel 8. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom, meeting ID number 978-772-8220, or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about the remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100 prior to the meeting. And with that, I would like to call the Select Board to order. Okay. Do I have to do a roll call? Okay. All right. Kurt?
Hi, Kurt Freskowski, Chair of the Finance Committee. I'd like to call the Finance Committee to order.
Okay. All right. And with that, I will turn it over to Robert Conran, the Town Manager, and Barbara Tierney, the Finance Manager, to present the FY 2027 budget public presentation. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Select Board, and members of the Finance Committee. Good evening, and thank you for having us this evening. Tonight, we're going to cover a lot of material and as quickly as possible so we can get to the most important part, which is the public input from the board, the FinCom, and the public at large. And all of our department heads are here tonight to answer any questions related to their budgets that you may have.
Hold on one sec. Carly, the screen went off in the back of us. I don't know what happened. It just died. Okay, go ahead, Robert.
All right. So we'll get right into it. Before I do that, I just want to thank Carly Antonellis, the Assistant Town Manager. I want to thank Barbara Tierney, the Finance Manager, who are up at the table with me. I want to thank all of the department heads for all of their work, the support of the Select Board and the Finance Committee, and the support of the taxpayers and residents of Ayer, because the budget is truly a community process that lasts all year long, and we're just going to talk about one piece of it tonight. So we'll get right into it. So the first slide, just where we are in the process. As I mentioned, it's a year-long process with the budget. Each year, by the beginning of October, the Select Board codifies a budget calendar for the whole year ahead, so we're all on the same page. We are here in March at the public forum where the red circle is, and the fourth Monday, the green circle. In April 27th will be a town meeting at 7 p.m. But as you can see, there are various processes that go throughout the whole year involving capital, rate review, etc. All of these meetings by law are public and open to the public to participate. Next slide. So FY27 is a unique year, and I started in November with this theme. I know the Select Board has heard it in the Finance Committee and the department heads, but for the public's benefit, of this perfect storm. And this comes from a report that was done by the Massachusetts Municipal Association back in October, that all cities and towns in Massachusetts are experiencing what is called a perfect storm, a conversion of various factors on all three levels of government that some are beyond the town's control but impact us. And it's estimated based on this report that the perfect storm could last anywhere between 3 to 5 years. And what that means is extraordinary pressures on municipal governments in terms of maintaining the level of service at an affordable rate. So some of the things on the federal level, there is unprecedented and ongoing volatility on the federal level. And this was before 3 weeks ago, and I'm not making any political statements, but the volatility on the federal level is impacting state and local. Federal government shutdown at the time. There's still a partial shutdown, political instability. economic impacts of tariffs. Believe it or not, the Department of Public Works in this town has begun to see occasionally these tariff fees on things, lingering inflation, which we'll talk about, and the unknown status of federal grants. For example, on the school side, Dr. Render was recently informed that in FY27 to anticipate a 15% reduction in federal entitlement grants to the schools. We're also seeing that on grants are becoming even more competitive. Grant pools are drying up. On the state level, there's rising costs and sluggish state aid on the state level. I mean, local aid hasn't kept up. School aid on the state level, lots of pressures. Loss of federal grants and aid are affecting the state government, decreased state aid, and there's an ongoing statewide healthcare crisis. 7 to 9 hospitals have closed in the last 18 months, including ours, and that's driving up costs on health insurance, which we'll talk about. On the local level, so what's our specific perfect storm? The omnibus budget, which we're going to talk about tonight, the average increase over the last 10 years has been about 5.2%, or $8 million over the last 10 years. In the long term, that's not sustained. And so one of the things we want to do is get that number back down to 4% at a minimum, if we can get lower in terms of sustainability. Health insurance, which we'll talk about, was originally projected at 25% for FY27 up until about a month and a half ago. That, to put that in perspective, that would have been about a $650,000 impact to the budget alone. Fortunately, this year, which we'll get into, that isn't the case. Debt service on capital projects, which I will say that Barbara Tierney has done a great job in really analyzing the debt service and really coming up with ways to minimize that based on our capital projects. I bring up the closure of the hospital. We in the assessors estimate that there will be at some point a loss of approximately $250,000 to $275,000 in tax revenue now that the building is vacant. Also, we lost 500 jobs. And this next line, the ongoing stress on the emergency response system has put increased costs to the town. And then lastly, and I think every single one of us falls in this category of taxpayer voter fatigue with respect to rising costs and spending. There is an affordability crisis in every city, town, every household. Taxpayers are feeling it. Voters are feeling it. There's a lot of concern and fatigue towards spending. And when does this end? But despite this, our challenge and opportunity is to forge ahead, and we will weather this perfect storm. Next. And one of the main reasons we're going to weather this is that the town of Ayer is very strong financially, and that did not happen overnight. It's at least been a decades-long process, maybe even longer. It is a result of the select board, the FinCom, town meeting, all the department heads, past, present. A lot of work has gone into this. So our certified free cash, which we'll talk about, it was at 2.9 million. Another high year last year was about 3.2 million. Our average is about 1 to 1.5 million. But that is a robust free cash. Our stabilization fund balance is 5.4 million. Our capital stabilization is at 6.1 million. Our bond rating is AA2, which is the second highest that you can get. The significance of that is it's a third-party metric that speaks to the town's strong financial position and management of that, and it gives us a more favorable borrowing rate, as mentioned. Next. So we have our umbrellas for the perfect storm. In the interest of time, I'll just highlight some of the others that we have. We have an unused tax levy capacity of approximately $4.2 million. So we're not even taxing to the max that we could without having to get into an override. And I'm not saying that we're looking to do that, so don't panic, but that is a key thing in our financial toolbox. We talked about stabilization, the UDAG balance, 2.1 million. That was as of November. Talked about free cash, the reserve fund at 150,000, which is still fully funded, hasn't been accessed. And the town currently and historically has a strong track record of getting grants, and our CPC Community Preservation Act program has helped with a lot of key projects as well. So we conservatively have over $20 million in financial budgetary reserves. And I just point out, last year, we were one of only 3 towns out of the 17 towns in the Neshoba Valley that didn't require some kind of override. And for FY27, we're not going to require an override, but you just have to look at the news, and all of our neighbors and so forth are in override territory, at least for a second year, if not for a first year. So when we look at the budget, what are we looking to do? Where do we get some of this guidance? And it comes from the financial policies that are developed by the town. They're adopted by the select board and the finance committee. They were last updated in 2023. They are on the website. That's a picture of the cover. But if you go to page 4, our goal is really to provide a full value to Ayer residents and businesses, quality municipal services at a cost-effective basis, make sure that we have adequate financial resources to sustain them, allow for responses to change in the economy, which we're in right now with this perfect storm, and to provide a roadmap for the future. So back in the beginning of November, when I met with all of the department heads in light of this perfect storm, this was my perspective to them as far as the budgetary goals. I said, look, we need to maintain our current quality and level of municipal service. We need to preserve and continue to maintain those fiscal reserves. We need to try to develop a budget with minimal reductions to municipal services. And we need to develop a plan for this year and moving forward to weather the perfect storm. And I need everybody to identify savings and efficiencies that will translate ultimately into taxpayer savings. And also, though we're not going to get into detail on the schools tonight, develop a viable school assessment that can pass town meeting in Ayer and Shirley, and to position us for the future. Next. So we anticipate, based on the MMA's analysis and so forth, this perfect storm period to last over the next 3 to 5 years. Our goal is to begin to get that omnibus back down to about 4%. Our goal was to reduce the omnibus spending not to exceed 5% or $1 million over last year. And as you'll see, I'm pleased to report that we accomplished that. You can see that historically it was about 5.2%. Last year, it increased by 5.6%. And departments were asked to prepare 3 scenarios: a level service scenario, which we do every year, a level funded scenario, which was, okay, prepare your 2027 budget using only the FY26 budget amounts, as if you didn't get an increase. And then number 3, prepare a 10% budget reduction scenario. And that was largely at the time planning for specifically the health insurance in the school assessment. Fortunately, we didn't have to get into that territory. Next. So here's a history of the omnibus budget increase. So right now, draft 2, which is in front of you, I'm pleased to report, would be a 3.37% increase, or approximately just over $600,000 increase, well below the target of $1 million or 5%. If we factor in this year, the average will be 4.8%. But when I mentioned 5.2%, that was before this. And you can see it varies over the years, but the last 3 years were well over 5%. Next. So the evolution of the budget. So last year's budget was just over 20 million. Draft 1 was sent to the select board and FinCom on January 16th. that came in at 5.3%. And then draft 2, which is in front of you, which was actually sent. We're talking about it tonight, but it was transmitted to everybody on Friday the 13th. Lucky number is at 3.3% or $674,000 increase. Next. So let's look. So this is it in a glance. And for tonight, we have draft 2 available on the screen for any specific questions. But looking at it overall, the omnibus budget is 20.6 million. It's an increase of 674,000 or 3.3%. It's a level services budget, which means it maintains the same level of municipal services from FY 2026. There are no new personnel positions in it. It does reduce 2 full-time positions to part-time, the interdepartmental assistant and the assistant building inspector. It removes the vacant social worker position. And the reason for that, and I don't say that lightly, but the position has been vacant for some time. We budgeted $67,000 for it. We have learned that is far too low. We also are reassessing, potentially a regional agreement. We also have in place since then COIN through the police department, which is providing social service work in terms of criminal justice and public safety. They have also been a resource when applicable to us. That's completely funded by a grant. The Council on Aging will be looking, again, to the future of social work, with the new building and so forth. The Neshoba Boards of Health. We do have a lot of resources, and I'm not saying that we don't need a full-time social worker, but we have to get creative and develop, that model. It does contain a 2% cost of living adjustment for all non-union personnel, which was recommended to the Select Board on February 17th, based on the criteria in the financial policies, and that's subject to town meeting approval. And it does contain the cost for 1 union contract and 4 personal service contracts. Next. So what are the major drivers in the budget? So every year, sometimes they change, sometimes they don't. So of the $674,000 increase, what are the major drivers? And these are them totaling $441,000, and then approximately $230,000 fall under that last bullet. So the contractual union and non-union costs, $61,000. Health insurance, $161,688, or that's at the 6.19%, not the 25%. IT department transition, pension assessment, and then overall increased costs. And I just have quick snapshots for each of the drivers. But before I get to that, I just want to point out one key slide here, which is a FY27 expense analysis. Because we hear all the time, and I don't disagree, we have to reduce the budget. We need tax relief. We have to cut the budget. Here's what the challenge is. Municipalities are service providers. We provide all kinds of services. And the qualified personnel is the most significant vehicle for doing that. So if you look at the expenses here, this pie graph, take the blue and the orange, which orange is benefits, blue is wages, and 77.8% of the omnibus budget is personnel. It's significant. So when we begin to get into reductions, it will be impact personnel, which will impact service delivery. So for example, that 10% scenario I talked about, when we looked at that, if we had to reduce every department budget just by 10% across every department, there would be personnel reductions, including fire, police, DPW. So there's an old saying, easier said than done, meaning on the reductions. That's what is so challenging when we say maintaining level services, is how do we maintain the personnel? So on the drivers, just real quick, Union contract, it's about a $41,000 impact. It's the town hall clerical union contract. It covers 17 positions. This is the first year costs. As many of you know, it requires approval by town meeting, so there'll be a town meeting article on that. And if you go to the contracts page on the website, the contract memorandum of agreement with all of the terms is available there for viewing. And I will do a brief presentation at town meeting on the impacts. Next. The non-union contracts, so these are personal service contracts. There were 4 this year: building commissioner, fire chief, deputy fire chief, and town clerk. The total cost impact was $20,000. These memorandum of agreements also are on the contracts page with all of the details, and these costs are contained within Article 5, the omnibus budget under the respective department. Next. Health insurance, we lucked out at 6.19% or 161,000 increase over previous years. You can see that, so our health insurance is provided by Maya. Historically, we've budgeted for about 15%, always with the hope and the target of coming in at 10%. This is becoming harder and harder every year. Maya projected and recommended a 25% increase, and that's what we had in the original budget. And as I mentioned, it came in much lower. The cost drivers were overall national statewide increases, prescription drug costs, increased need for medical services, and we're limited of municipal health insurance plan options. In other words, there's not a lot of options outside of Maya. What accounted for such a big drastic drop in the end was the Maya Board of Directors voted to no longer, as of July 1st of this year, cover the GLP class of drugs like your Ozempics and so forth, except for diabetic conditions, so all off-label. And part of that is we were told approximately there was a 685% increase in prescriptions for the GLP class last year. We did have a favorable claims history, and I believe there was significant pressure put on Maya from other cities and towns based on this 25%. So we have 6.1%. The concern is health insurance is not fixed and what will be the case for next year, but we take it one thing at a time. Next. IT, as I came before the board, IT is sort of in a period of transition. There is an increase of about 58,000 to this budget this year. I'm pleased to report that the town has hired a professional IT manager who joined us in January, John Maxwell. The factors that go into this increase, we had a previous model where we had an IT coordinator. With the IT manager, there's obviously a change in the salary. We have a new IT consultant service firm, Worldband. We are moving towards a mandatory upgrade to the government version of Office 365 for public safety personnel, plus they're required to have email conversion, mandatory increased cybersecurity enhancements across the board, and we are in the process of migrating the town from physical servers to the cloud. Cybersecurity is a big deal. As you know, if you watch 60 Minutes, the Littleton Water Department had a cyber attack a year or so ago. It's something we take very serious. We're also required to have cybersecurity insurance now and to meet all kinds of regulations. So IT is the new frontier. This doesn't even include the future of AI and so forth. But when I started in Ayer, there was no IT department, and now we continue to grow in that front. Next, pension assessment, real quick, 6.4% this year. A significant amount, but that's the standard. I just want to point out that we continue to forward fund the pension. $300,000 each year at savings. If we didn't forward fund it, that percentage increase would be approximately more around 11%. And what drives the pension assessment is the number of positions and the salary and wages. Next. And lastly, there's that perfect storm cloud. Again, the overall increased costs. We talked about the federal and state situation. Ongoing lingering inflation. So cities and towns can raise taxes, and we don't rate tax to the max by no more than 2.5% without an override. And that goes back to 1983. The perfect storm study shows that just over that time period, that the municipal cost increase has actually been more like 3 to 3.8%. So there's a structural issue even within the whole Prop 2.5 that we're not keeping pace with inflation. Health insurance and healthcare costs we touched upon. Recent energy and fuel cost surge. Just in the last 3 weeks, again, not a political statement, but if you look in draft 2, the fuel budget is level funded. One of the things we are looking at is reassessing that in light of the cost of fuel. Also, if you look at inflation, the one thing that was mitigating inflation down was the fuel costs. That's gone out the window. So inflation, so these are difficult times in that sense. The federal and unfunded federal and state mandates touched upon the grant funding. There is an affordability and a housing crisis. We hear about the housing crisis in Massachusetts all the time. There's an affordability crisis across the board in every household, every business, every city and town, including Ayer, and it just continues. And we talked about voter fatigue and spending. And so the last point, the cost of maintaining level funded services remains a significant ongoing challenge. So shifting gears real quick to the recommended uses for free cash. So the use of free cash is subject to town meeting authorization. And so each year we make a professional recommendation on the uses for free cash, but ultimately it's up to the select board in placing it onto the warrant and to town meeting as to how we use it. Each one of these categories is its own warrant article on the warrant. So of the 2.9 million, we're recommending the compensated balance fund of putting 20,000 in there. The current balance is 62,000. This compensated balance fund was created by town meeting in 2020. It allows us to fund retirements and separation from service where there's benefits owed, to plan for them. And also historically before this, it would hit the departmental budget, which at times, because it's unknown, could affect the RFT and so forth. The forward funding of the pension, which we've continued to do with savings. The OPEB, the post-employment benefits, per the financial policies, we seek to put 300,000 in per policy, and we use the local meals tax portion, which is 175, and then 125 from free cash to get to the 300,000. The UDAG, the Urban Development Action Grant, which is under the select board, we're recommending to replenish it, 500,000. The select board authorized $1 million from UDAG this past fall for the senior center project, subject to future replenishment by town meeting. We're recommending, given the 2.9, to make a significant repayment there. Capital stabilization to put $1 million in there. Town meeting authorized $2 million for the senior center project this past fall. The current balance is $6.1 million. Again, there's an opportunity here to replenish that. Capital stabilization is also an interest-bearing account. Stabilization, that's the other stabilization account, looking to put $620,680 in. The current balance is 5.4. And then lastly, to pay down 3 band projects, and I presented this both to the FinCom and the select board, and full credit to Barbara Tierney, the finance manager. This was her idea and put this together. But there's an opportunity to pay off 3 previous projects. And if we go to the next slide, Barbara has calculated. So these are the 3 projects. They're from the 2024 annual town meeting: the police department furniture, DPW sidewalk, tractor, snow blower, road paving. There's the principal amount in the yellow, the 346,830, which we're recommending to use the free cash. We'll do 2 things. There's an estimated $61,830 in savings that we had realized from interest, and the $346,830 would be taken off of the general fund tax impact. I think this is a really creative and good way of use of free cash, and that we're maximizing the value through that. So kudos to Barbara on putting that together. There'll be a town meeting article for that if decide to adopt that approach. Okay, real quick, and we're almost done. The capital plan quick overview. So capital planning, this is all of the town's vehicles, infrastructure. Capital is any one-time cost. And we have, through our financial policies, there's a capital planning committee that's appointed by the select board. The chair of the committee is a selectman, and it's Christopher Tavares this year. The chair of the finance committee is also on there. Residents, Barbara and I, and they, from October to February, review the 5-year capital plan and review all of the first year requests and put together recommendations for the select board and for town meeting. So as part of our reduction effort, and I want to thank all of the town departments and the capital planning committee, we were able to reduce the capital plan by 54%, or reduce it by almost 4 million. Again, tightening things up. There are always more requests, and it was more of an issue of needs versus wants. So you can see last year at 7.5, 3.4. And then the general fund capital, why we highlight that is the general fund capital is what hits the tax rate. The other capital from the enterprise funds is paid for out of the rates and fees from each of the enterprise accounts. So when you boil the 646,161 down, there's about, as you can see, the general fund borrow is about 361,661. And Barbara has calculated using the average home assessment at 571,000 is about $11.43 would be the tax impact for the general fund borrow. Next. And then this quick, you'll see this in the warrant. This is the borrow items that were recommended by the capital planning. Again, like ambulance enterprise, the ambulance replacement will come out of the ambulance enterprise fund and so forth. Next. And then the other article, so anything over 50,000 is usually recommended that we borrow, and anything under 50,000 that we pay for directly out of capital stabilization. So these are the smaller items that would be paid for out of capital stabilization, totaling 284,000. So next steps. So we're here tonight. On Thursday, April 2nd, the Finance Committee is going to meet and review the financial warrant articles, and the Finance Committee will make its recommendations on the financial articles. On Friday, April 3rd at noon, the warrant closes. Now, we have all of the warrant articles, but the deadline is noon for any citizens' petitions to the town clerk. The select board will meet on April 7th to approve the warrant. The warrant will be publicly posted and sent to print and mailing by April 10th. Town meeting, so everybody will receive the warrant by mail in advance. Monday, April 27th, 7 p.m. is annual town meeting. And then after that, on Tuesday, May 12th, will be the annual town election. So last but not least, I want to thank everybody for your time. I know a lot of material and quickly. If there are any questions, we want people to have the information and to have them answered. So please do not hesitate to contact me. There's my email address and the direct phone number. All of the budget material, and we'll be verifying that as we move forward, because we did transition to a new website, and I understand, like any transition, there may be some things missing, but we'll get it cleared up. The budget webpage will have all of the documents, and then starting on April 10th, we will activate the town meeting webpage, which will have all of the information tied into the articles. So with that, I thank you for all of your time and consideration tonight. Turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
All right,
Thank
well,
you.
thank you very much. So first, the way it's gonna go, I'm gonna open up for questions from the table. And then I'll open it up to the public after everyone on the table is done. So does any select board member have a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I commend all the work that was put into this. You brought up saying tax to the max, and I think that's always the kind of thought process out there. Generally is, we're right at the max, we're taxing people at the highest rate possible, and we're not. And going by what I hear, amongst all the residents, the service that we provide, and I say we as a town, DPW, fire, police, library, etc., it's always right at the top. And I would never, you brought up a good point about if you reduce the budget 10%, that's people, and that greatly reduces the service that we would have out there. So, I certainly don't want to reduce the excellent service we have from all the departments we have here. And we're doing that well below our tax levy, the maximum amount. So, I think this is very commendable.
Anything?
No.
Okay.
Thanks.
No question?
I agree with Chris. I think
Andrew?
everybody, all the department heads did a great job.
I'm good.
Yeah, I just,
I commend as well. So
just wanted to say is, as FinCom chairman and also being on the capital planning and rate review, especially with the capital planning, departments did a great job of cutting that down, and then, everything else has been, tightened up very well. Thank you.
All right, well, somebody else table here. Is anybody from the public? Yes.
Hello, sorry,
Hello. Please state your name and address for the recording, please.
Madam Chair. Rachel Kozera, 30 Groton Harvard Road. I was wondering, through the chair, if it's possible to outline the functionality of the social worker position and, just, I guess, what would that person do within the community? And I know you mentioned the coin program, but I just didn't know if there was a gap in service with regard to, the services that a social worker would provide.
That position, unfortunately, has also been empty for about 18 months. And it was approved for town meeting about 2 years ago. And it was primarily the person was sitting at the senior center helping out there. Like I said, it's been vacant for 18 months. I'll let Robert explain more on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
He can better answer that question.
Rachel, how are you? So the town historically had not had a full-time social worker, and it's been an ongoing need across municipal governments about having a social worker. So we had put together a proposal a couple of years ago that town meeting supported for a social worker. And sometimes you learn by doing, as they say. And we had an individual for a brief period of time, but we quickly realized that the salary that we had was not competitive. Additionally, we have a lot of town of Ayer has always done a great job, and not just the municipal government, in taking care of people. In other words, the COA does a fabulous job with seniors, our Community and Economic Development Office with housing, the Neshoba Board of Health with the public nurse and so forth. So we need to take a step back and look at the best model to deliver those services. And the coin I mentioned is it's not a new program, but through Chief Gill's leadership, COIN is now housed here in Ayer and provides social services largely to public safety and police work and police matters, but they've been a great help with us as well. So we're not saying that there isn't a need for a social worker. We just need to come up with the correct model for that. And given the tightening of the budget right now where it was vacant, that was an area for now that we're recommending to take a step back on the funding front and revisit it.
Thank you so much. But I was just wondering, I guess what holes, I guess, would be, have been created because we don't have a social worker. I just know from just some emails that I read today that some folks that had some concerns weren't, I guess the concerns weren't addressed. So I just didn't know if the social worker would be in charge of taking care of the public as well, with regard to concerns they might have or different things like that. So that's why I was just trying to understand.
Speak to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, go ahead, Carly.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I can speak to some of that. So the model we were using for the social worker was not like a healthcare clinician type setup where you would come in and you have a consult for, say, like a hoarding issue, and then we bill your insurance for that. This was more of a community resource navigator role. So we would help guide you to existing services that exist already within our service territory. So if you needed help getting connected to health insurance, Mass Health, if you needed food benefits or fuel assistance, that was kind of our model, our base model. And we were going to look to build on that. But unfortunately, as Robert said, we were underfunded for the position. And what we needed, we're probably about $45,000 to $50,000 short to get to the place where we could set up like a billing model to help individuals one-on-one with specific issues, other than just referring out.
Okay. So I'm confused. So is that just not a service that's provided to the community? It just seems like we're in a, not to quote what you were saying earlier, time, and not to say one thing politically one way or another, but it just seems like it might be good to keep some position like that in mind down the road for our residents who sometimes need advocates and different folks like that, maybe even a part-time position to get the ball rolling, or to use that money to like a consultant firm to determine like what parameters you want to set forth for a role like that. So anyway.
I appreciate that, Rachel, and I'll send to you, for your interest, what the job description was and what we had, but we definitely are not saying that there isn't a need, and we're not saying we need to come up with the right model for that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on. Susan had her hand up first.
Well, I just wanted to explain.
This is Susan Copeland, the town clerk.
It was a new position created, so it never really had the opportunity to have, like what you were saying, like, a substantial job description and impact, unfortunately. So it was started and created, town meeting afforded it to us to start working. We've never been able to fill it. So there isn't necessarily any services not being given to residents or anybody seeking them,
Yeah.
because it never had a chance to get the teeth behind it.
Yeah.
So while a lot of those services are dispersed amongst other, like economic development, council on aging, the police with the COIN program, the services, the support has been dispersed. It's just not at a social worker level like we do all want it to be. But eventually we need to, offer more money to be able to get that right person to kind of oversee it. So no one's lacking support. And if anybody was to come seeking support, the town would still support in using Neshoba Board of Health. So I just wanted to clarify that no one's lacking or it isn't a follow through or missed opportunities. Like the support's still there, we're just still gonna maintain it until we can get that position filled and where it needs to be. So no one's hopefully falling through the cracks. And if they are, please have them reach out to anybody, even me. I don't know what I can do.
All right, Dennis Curran?
Thanks, Rachel, for your insightful questions. And Robert, thank you for your presentation tonight. I'd just like to let you know, and I'm sure you're aware of this, that the Council on Aging Board of Directors would welcome a detailed conversation with you regarding the position of the social worker, what their job description should be, what kind of tasks we would envision them participating in. Because it is clearly a need. It's clearly not one that has been fully met over the last year and a half, with the position being empty for so long. And the kinds of things that a town social worker can do are, that is, and I'm sure that the chief is aware of this, the COIN program is not meant, that is, we should not be, I don't think, sliding the conversation from the town social worker to the COIN. That is,
No, and
They're-
nobody's doing that.
they're not in any way
Yeah.
similar, related.
Mhm.
Their skills are different, their purpose for existing is different. The kinds of services that they're supposed to provide to the various citizens of the town are different. So I think that we really need to concentrate on what are the long-term benefits to the town of having a social worker, and what specific needs we would envision them meeting by being here. And again, Robert, I would welcome you coming to the board of directors, and we can come up with a job description and hopefully increase the salary so that we can get the position filled.
So I think that's where the problem is the increasing of the salary, to make it, people wanting to come to it, and this unfortunately is not the year to do it. But the social worker position shall be kept on the radar, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? Okay, well then, if nobody else has any questions, I'm just going to remind everybody that town meeting is on Monday, April 27th at the Ayer Shirley Regional High School auditorium, 7 p.m. It is every year, the annual town meeting. It's on the fourth Monday of April. And the warrant will start getting mailed out on Friday, April 10th. It gets mailed out to one per residence that has a voter in it, which ends up being over 3,000 warrants mailed out. So hopefully we'll have a really healthy, full auditorium on Monday, April 27th, because that's what we'd like to see.
It's
Yes.
actually one per household regardless of voting status. So
Thank
if-
you for the
If
correction.
you don't vote, hopefully you'll see it and get encouraged to come down to town hall and vote, register to vote.
Okay, but anyways, it's a lot. It's a few thousands that are mailed out.
Yeah,
So,
over 4,000.
all right. So if there's nothing else, Mr. Chair, if you'd like to adjourn your committee.
Hi, Kurt Breskowski, Finance Committee Chair. We will adjourn the Finance Committee.
We need to, do you need to make a motion?
Yeah.
Make a motion to adjourn the FinCom meeting.
Seconds.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so you guys are adjourned.
So the Finance Committee is adjourned.
Okay,
Madam Chair,
yes,
make a motion that the board adjourn. Select board adjourn.
okay.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And chair says aye. Good night, everybody.